Good evening, I'm Richard Cissel, and this is your May 5th Migration Minute. Learn where and when birds are going to be over the next 3 nights. Did when make sense? Yeah. Let's look quickly to last night to see what happened. You can see at the peak moment in migration last night, over 550 million birds. And where were they? Well, pretty much only the eastern half of the U.S. saw any serious migration last night. So, over 500 million birds in the sky at one point, and it was all out east. From Texas and Florida all the way up the northeast coast, you can see there were just lines of birds moving everywhere. The rest of us, mostly high and dry, except for a little bit down in the desert southwest. So that's last night. Now that's the peak moment. That is when the most birds were flying over the U.S. at a given moment. Over the course of the night, that means a lot more birds were on the move. But, is that the biggest night? We've yet to see. There may still be bigger nights coming. Let's look ahead and see what the future nights hold. Looking ahead to tonight, because of some storm systems, what we've got about 261 million birds predicted. But, where's all of that migration happening? Again, mostly to the east or to the far Pacific coast, because we've got big systems scattered throughout, and it's again restricting where the birds are moving, at least in big numbers. There's still some birds sneaking up through there. You can see some birds sneaking up over there, but for the most part, where we're seeing the birds is again that region there, all because that system is not allowing the birds to go beyond. Looking ahead to the night of the 6th, 252 million birds predicted to be on the move. Where? Well, it looks like there's a little bit moving up the Great Plains there, the easternmost part of the Great Plains. And down in the southeast, we're going to have some birds moving, but that storm system is going to prevent them from getting too far. And then the Pacific coast again, seeing a little bit of action. Those of us in the Rockies, we're still just not seeing much. We keep getting these amazing spring systems that are bringing moisture that we need, but we're seeing our migration happen at a nice, slow, gradual pace. Little bit of bird, little bit of bird, little bit of bird. And finally, looking ahead to the night of the 7th, this is when some stuff opens up in the central part of the country, from Texas all the way up into the northern Great Plains and the Great Lakes states. Lots of movement, and it's a really big movement all over the area, but you can see birds are still going to be moving over here, all the way up the Pacific coast, and even the Rockies are going to get into it a little bit in this region here, although this system here, we'll see what it does if it prevents too much excessive movement, especially for those of us in the interior west. Okay, let's talk lights out. Over the next 3 nights, where do we need to get our lights out? Well, the next 2 nights, you can probably guess, it's going to be in those areas where we saw hot and heavy migration. So, Pacific coast and East Coast down into the Gulf Coast. Those states are where it's biggest, but you can see even more. The high lights out alert areas are a little even more narrowed. It's those areas right there where we really have to focus our efforts to get lights out, to get windows treated, to protect birds. These are places that see a lot of migration, and birds face a lot of risks. For the night of the 6th, this one looks a little bit different because of those storm systems and where they're going, but you can see lights out alerts all the way from the desert southwest up the Pacific coast, a little bit of the interior west as well. In fact, most of the west has some level of lights out alerts. And then northern Great Plains, we're seeing a little bit there. And then the Gulf Coast states and the southern Atlantic states also seeing some pretty big lights out alerts due to movement and the amount of light we have in those areas, the amount of development we have. And then finally, the night of the 7th, this was a big night. We saw that was over 300 million birds predicted, which means even more may end up moving. So where that night? Well, pretty much everywhere. You can see the entire central part scattered throughout the southern, western, everywhere. Everywhere has a lights out alert, except for a few places up in the northeast. You can see no major lights out alerts in those areas, at least not as of now. That may change over the next few days. We'll see what happens. But as of right now, for the lights out forecast, this is where we got to get lights out. You can see we've got, especially from the whole state of Texas, essentially, the whole state of Louisiana, all of Oklahoma, Kansas, all needing lights out alerts, southeast Nebraska, the only populated part of Nebraska. You can see through central Missouri, and then parts of Florida, southern Mississippi and Alabama, and then over into New Mexico and Arizona, that desert southwest area, parts of Nevada, the only populated part of Nevada, or the only two populated parts of Nevada, gonna need some lights out alerts there, most of California, and then the Pacific coast of Oregon and Washington, plus then a little of the interior there as well. So where do the lights out alerts need to be the night of the 7th? Everywhere. Just listed off everywhere. I almost listed all 50 states. Could I do it? Probably not, but maybe. Only if we don't include capitals. For your May 5th Migration Minute, I'm Richard Cissel, back at my desk, here to help you know when and where the birds are and the best ways to help them out. See you soon.